Let's get into the news this morning. And breaking overnight, President Trump has paused American military aid to Ukraine days after that embarrassing row with Ukraine's President Zelensky.
Well, there's no indication yet as to how long the pause will last, but it follows Mr. Trump accusing European leaders of weakness for their reliance on America.
Now, yesterday he also accused Ukraine of not wanting peace, whilst they have America's backing, adding that Ukraine should be more appreciative.
Well, speaking overnight to Fox News, the Vice President, Vance, had this to say on European negotiations.
I honestly don't care what the Europeans say in public. What I care is what they say in private, and what they need to be saying to President Zelensky is this can't go on forever. The bloodshed, the killing, the economic devastation, it's making everyone worse off. The only pathway to, I think, back to peace and prosperity is what the president is trying to accomplish.
He's a lot to say, that J.D. Vance. Let's hear what the American political analyst Eric Ham has to say about him. Do you know what, Eric? There's just something about his personality I don't like. He's too direct. He's got too much to say for himself, for someone who's new on the international stage.
Well, he is actually being a good vice president and making sure that he sticks up for his boss. And Donald Trump wants peace, and he believes that the onus on peace is through Ukraine, as if Russia had nothing to do with the invasion. And so I think what we're seeing here is the Republicans led by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are actually pushing a narrative that it is somehow President Zelensky himself who is basically thwarting this idea of peace.
Eric, just where I fall out with you on this is I just think of dead people, people who are being murdered, and people who are left homeless on the streets and just dispossessed and whatever. And we get these two guys coming in and it's about brokering a deal. It's about money, money, money.
Yeah, that's right. And when we see President Donald Trump actually suspending aid to Ukraine, we're only talking about $4 billion. The United States has already provided more than $180 billion, even though Donald Trump somehow seems to exaggerate that figure to $350 billion. But again, I think what we're continuing to see, and which is why this is so very dangerous in terms of what we're seeing, not only with the suspension of aid to Ukraine, but also we know tomorrow there will be these massive debilitating tariffs on countries like Canada and Mexico and, of course, China, which could send the entire global economy into a tailspin. Donald Trump continues to push this idea of disinformation, that the United States has actually provided more resources to Ukraine than it did, and that somehow the trade deficits with other countries is much larger than it is. And that's to actually bolster a narrative and a policy that is basically false, and it leads to bad policy. And I think we're seeing that play out both with Ukraine and I think tomorrow with this looming trade war.
You can see the way that Trump is working here, can't you? He's pausing US aid to Ukraine now. I've seen it with tariffs, as you say, with China, with Canada and with Mexico as well. He pauses these things or threatens tariffs in order to get what he wants. So do you think this will bring Zelensky to the table to sign that minerals deal? Or do you think it will just force Europe to step up and try and cover the US aid?
Well, I think a little bit of all of the above is actually taking place. We know President Zelensky was in Washington at the White House on Friday at the invitation of the White House itself. It was the president himself who was there, and we were told that they were all there because of a deal that was expected to be signed. And it was from our sources, it was the president who did not want to go forward with this meeting, and that it was President Donald Trump who told Secretary of State Marco Rubio and General Kellogg to actually inform President Zelensky that the meeting and, of course, the signing would not be taking place. So now this does leave Ukraine in limbo, but we are seeing more talk from the Europeans. The question now becomes, will there be action to actually go along with what we have been seeing and hearing from Europe?
So, Eric, what's your view? Do you think there will be a signing of this deal that wasn't signed last Friday?
I do believe there can be, but I think so much of the onus now is on President Donald Trump. We have heard from President Zelensky that he wants to try to make good on the deal and that he wants to try to find a way to actually end the tension between the two leaders. But again, I think that is going to be incumbent upon President Donald Trump. Look, we know this would not have happened if J.D. Vance had not actually opened his mouth and blew things up. And so now, again, much like what we see with the White House placing so much emphasis on Ukraine, the emphasis now is again on Ukraine to somehow find a way to assuage whatever hurt feelings that President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance have. And the question is, can President Zelensky find a way to turn that square peg into a round hole? Only time will tell.
But also the role of the vice president and how Vance is interpreting it. Up until now, we didn't really hear about vice presidents. They didn't speak. They didn't make much noise. They didn't make much fuss. But this guy, he's got a lot to say for himself. He's very visible, isn't he?
He is, and I think he's really warming up to the role of vice president. And of course, many believe that he is Donald Trump's natural successor. In fact, polls show that he actually does have a huge lead over any of his potential competitors if, in fact, he decides to run for the presidency in 4 years. And so clearly, I think what we're seeing here is he's actually beginning to feel himself. And I think he believes that one day he will be president of the United States. And I think he's making it known and making himself seen and heard for the rest of the American people.
OK, Eric Ham, good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Always good to hear from you, Eric. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. What's got the newspapers going? What's got you talking about what's in the newspapers? We asked that to Anna Firth, former Conservative MP, and Fraser Myers, the journalist. Thank you both very much indeed. Guys, and Anna, we'll begin with you. Trump and J.D. Vance, they have a lot to say for themselves. And where's it all going at the minute? He's suspended all military aid to Ukraine.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is typical bully boy tactics. Zelensky, I think he's a very brave man. He stood up to Putin, and now he needs to stand up to Trump. If he had signed that mineral deal, of course, Trump would have carried on with the military aid. But yesterday, Zelensky said he was prepared to sign the mineral deal. So why Trump is behaving like this, I've got no idea. But this is a real opportunity for NATO. What we need to do is actually come together, provide the aid. It's actually a minuscule proportion of the European economy. Sign the minerals deal ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do.
And benefit from what Trump is hoping to benefit.
Exactly.
But then, you see, he holds all the cards, Fraser, I think, because if he doesn't like what everybody else is doing, for instance, I don't believe Keir Starmer acted independently with his leaders meeting on Saturday, Sunday and whatever. I think he phones Trump and he says, listen, if you don't mind, I'm going to meet with these other guys. And then, are you okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah. So Starmer makes it look as if he's somehow independent and somehow a leader, but he is in Trump's back pocket, for instance.
And Trump is very happy, or wants to make it look as if he is making European leaders step up and take responsibility. You know, that's the message that he wants to send to his domestic audience. Starmer himself has admitted that his proposal for a coalition of the willing of European troops in Ukraine is going nowhere without a US backstop. Now, the US, for its part, thinks that the minerals deal is enough of a security guarantee, or at least that's the line being put out by J.D. Vance. Putin won't attack us if there's enough US commercial interests in Ukraine. I'm not sure that's true. I mean, there were commercial interests in Ukraine before the initial invasion. Obviously, this would step that up. And the other thing, you know, I suppose the other factor that is, not working in Keir Starmer's favour is that any suggestion of troops from a NATO country in Ukraine is going to be rebuffed by Putin. That's going to be a big red line in any peace deal. So it's something clearly it doesn't seem like it's going to work, this plan.
So Trump has pulled all aid now, but as Anna was pointing out, this is after Zelensky said he'd actually be happy to sign this minerals deal. So why now? What's he hoping?
It seems to be almost just part of this fallout of this. It's almost like a personal spat. Trump feels slighted based on Friday's meeting. This seems to be entirely... I mean, we have a snowflake in the White House, unfortunately, and they want Zelensky to come and grovel and apologise and say how grateful he is to the US. It doesn't seem to be that much deeper than that. I mean, it is worth remembering that Trump and his team really do have the impression that Zelensky is the bad guy in this, that Ukraine is the bad guy in this.
And I don't believe Trump is not phoning up Putin and saying, I'm going to kick Zelensky, and if I do this, will you go easy on these certain things or whatever? I think this is all part of the negotiations and disinformation. I mean, you know, people love it. You know, people are phoning today and criticising us for saying things. You call out these politicians for being charlatans, for being liars, for being bullies, for being whatever it happens to be. But Trump does not tell the truth. You know, he says we're lending them £350 billion or whatever, and it turns out to be it's like £2 billion he's lending. There's so many inaccuracies with what's going on. Now, so Zelensky, because he's not signing this deal, Trump then goes and releases a press statement saying, what did he say? He said, Zelensky says, we are very, very far away from a deal. And Trump then posts a link on social media saying this is the worst statement that could have been made by Zelensky, and America will not put up with it for much longer. What does he mean? Put up with what?
Trump is the president of the Western world, and he has got to stop just reaching for his phone and putting out statements on Twitter. That is no way to run, the world's biggest power. But ultimately, I would go as far as to say this is like 1939 all over again. Let's not forget that America actually was not prepared to stand up to Hitler initially.
Yep.
It was only the UK and Europe. We are the ones who actually had the reputation.
It was Japan bombing the hell out of them, Pearl Harbor.
Japan got involved that America stepped up. So Europe and the UK leading has a reputation for standing up to bullies. We've done it before, and I think we should do it again.
Fraser, is this coercive diplomacy when you've got this arm twisting like this from someone like President Trump?
I think that's probably, how it will be justified in the end, how it will be sort of, there's certainly an element to that. They want Zelensky to sign a deal. I mean, the fact is, what I find strange is that Russia is in no rush to sign a peace deal. Trump is the one in the biggest rush to sign a peace deal because it thinks it will make him look good. It will, I mean, of course, we all want to see an end to the war, obviously, but we want to see an end to the war on Ukraine's terms. Trump's not particularly bothered about how the war ends, whether Ukraine loses territory or things like that. So that's kind of the worry, I think.
But it's in all of our interest for it to be a long-lasting peace, which I guess is Zelensky's point. There's no point ending this war and then Putin comes back in 2 years' time, having rearmed.
I think
and
exactly.
try and take more territory.
Well, that's absolutely right, because there's not going to be any peace without the military backstop. I mean, any peace, any document written by Putin, signed by Putin, without that backstop is not worth the paper it's written on, is it? So we have
persuading Trump round to that idea, because at the moment he's saying no to any backstop.
He's going in the other direction.